Welcome back to our daily Bible study. I am Matthew Gage, pastor here at Faith Baptist Church, and we're going to be in Genesis chapter number 28. Genesis chapter number 28. And a few different things that will happen in here. Kind of the main thrust of this chapter is Jacob leaving his family and Isaac and Rebekah and heading towards Haran back to the Abraham's family ancestral home, was setting up the events coming where he's going to find his wives there. We'll get to that. We'll get that next chapter. Yes, next chapter. So looking ahead, I hadn't looked that far ahead. I had to glance down and see. But chapter 28, not very long here, 22 verses. That's a relief after a couple of these have been kind of long. But that's kind of the thrust of this chapter, is Jacob heading there. A few different important things will happen here. The most famous thing we'll look at is the vision at Bethel, where Jacob sees the vision of God, and God reaffirms some of those promises, the Abrahamic covenant to Jacob. So let's just jump around in Genesis chapter number 28, verse number 1. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. So first thing we see here, is a command to go. So, telling him to get out, don't marry a wife from Canaan like his brother Esau did, and that's going to come up here in a little bit. That, of course, was a grievance to Esau's parents, to Isaac and Rebekah, and I think there's a lot of things from cultural to spiritual to just so many aspects of that. Also, I think it's a kind of a slap back to the promises of God with that intermarriage that he was making with the people in the land. But anyway, we'll revisit that here in just a little bit. But that's the command that Isaac is telling him to go. Verse number 3. And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. So Isaac is, acknowledging and passing on that Abrahamic blessing down to his son Jacob here, and kind of acknowledging that Jacob, you're the one that those promises are going to come through, setting up that chain of Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, which is so important to the Jewish faith and Jewish identity. And as we develop here in the book of Genesis and beyond, a very important distinction: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Verse number 5. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram unto Laban the son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. So going there to his uncle. Verse number 6, we'll have a little bit of a little aside here for a few verses, and we see Esau. Verse 6. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take him a wife from thence, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother, and was gone to Padan Aram. And Esau, seeing that the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac his father, and kind of got all these little stipulation things building up to the next verse, where Esau is seeing, well, wait a minute, my father told Jacob to go marry a wife from over there, and Jacob obeyed, and they don't like my wives. That builds up here to verse number 9. Then went Esau unto Ishmael, his uncle, and took unto the wives which he had Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. So now he takes a third wife of some family lineage here. I mean, there's some kinship here, but once again, this is kind of tying back to, where's Ishmael from? His mother was an Egyptian. We're getting some of these lands and these places that Abraham and Isaac were told not to go to stay away from, and he's intermarrying with them and making these alliances with them. So that's Esau's reaction here, verse number 10. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows, and lay down in the place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. I've heard people joke and say, yes, you'll have strange dreams too if you use a stone for a pillow. And by the way, I'm going to say that's not just him resting his head on a stone. My understanding of that is basically making a bed of stones to lie on. So it's a lot worse just laying your head on something hard. He's got an entire bed made out of stones. And what does he see? The ladder, you hear the term Jacob's ladder from the little trinket toy to the old spiritual song, we're climbing Jacob's ladder. This is where that imagery comes from. This is very important. Not just the ladder. I don't want to get sidetracked. There's a ladder and you got angels going up and down. That's interesting. The main important thing is what's going to be right here in verse number 13. So don't get sidetracked with the ladder. Look at verse 13. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And in thee and thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. In those verses, we have God himself reiterating those promises made to Abraham and saying, Jacob, the promises I made to your grandfather, the promises I made to your father Isaac, I am now making to you. Where we had saw at the beginning of this, Isaac saying those blessings are going to be through you, or through Jacob. Now, God is reiterating, saying, yes, made those promises to Abraham. I chose his son Isaac to carry them through, and now I am choosing you, Jacob, to be the one that carries this promise. I'm going to make of you, your descendants, a great nation. I'm going to give you and your descendants this promised land. Verse 16. And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. It's funny. That's how many times in life does that happen, where something happens and you suddenly snap to and you realize, my goodness, the Lord was here. The Lord did something. The Lord just spoke to me in a most unusual way, an unusual manner, an unusual messenger. And here's Jacob just thinking, oh, I'm getting away from my brother Esau, who wants to kill me. I'm doing what my mom and dad want me to do. I'm going to go find a wife. And in this place where he doesn't even have, it sounds like, provision enough to have a proper bed, here he is sleeping on stones for a bed, and God saying, I'm going to do all these wonderful things with you and through you. And now he's saying, surely the Lord is in this place. Verse 17, he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Now, I want to point out here his reaction to seeing God and speaking to God. And this is something I'll point out throughout the scriptures, from Isaiah chapter number 6 to even Daniel's interaction with angels and things. But especially when dealing with God, maybe less with angels, but when dealing specifically with God, when human beings deal with God, their initial reactions are fear, are utter inadequacy of being overwhelmed by the glory and the power and the presence of God. And that's exactly what Jacob did here. Is he is overwhelmed that, my goodness, I'm afraid. I spoke to God. This place must be where God is. So verse 18, and Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows, and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of the place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first. Now, talk about this real quick. So what does he do? He wants to set up a memorial. We've seen that through here, the wells that were dug. and different things. Well, here Jacob is setting up a memorial. He says, I want to remember this place. And so he takes those stones, he builds a mound, a pillar of stones. He pours oil on top of it. That's some wonderful signification there, symbolism of the Spirit, also of anointing, and also to help preserve and mark those rocks. This isn't just a pile of rocks. Look, they've been poured over with oil. And note here the name of the place, Bethel. Bethel in Hebrew, Beth is house. So every time you see the word Beth, whether it's Bethesda or Bethlehem, you have a house. Beth means house. El is short for Elohim, or God, one of the names of God. So basically what this name means is the house of God, the presence of God, the dwelling of God, the place of God. So very, very important definition that he gives this place, where he saw this ladder, where he saw God, and God spoke to him, made these promises. He says, this is the house of God, the place of God. So beautiful, wonderful imagery here. And I'm very careful when I say that. A lot of times, if we see that word in my printing here, I'm not sure if this is in all of them or not, but I've got the little dash between Beth and El, a little dash there. Sometimes we'll say, oh, it's Bethel. It's Bethel. Well, I think it's kind of important here. I'm trying to stress that. Beth-El. This is the house, Beth, of El, God. So I think that's important to note. Verse number 20. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. For this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Jacob's ever kind of the bargaining person. He's trying to kind of cut a deal with God in a sense here. The vow that he makes is saying, God, if you'll do this for me. I think Jacob's faith is imperfect still. And we all have imperfect faith. We all can grow here. But he's saying, God, if you will do this for me, if you'll protect me in this way that I go, I'm going to go find a wife. If I can return again to this place in peace, not get killed by my brother, nothing happened to me along the way, then I'm going to serve God. I think that's a dangerous kind of thing for us to do, to say, God, if you'll do this. How many times do we do it, though, in our thinking? We'll say, God, if you will just protect me, God, if you'll just heal my loved one, then I will do this. I think this is a great expression of humanity in that, lack of perfect faith in Jacob and in what he is doing in this. I guess you could say, well, he's saying this knowing that God will help him, and it's just a matter of faith, saying, oh, I know God's going to help me, therefore God's going to be God. I don't really see that in here. I think Jacob is still, he knows who God is. He knows God is great. He knows God is powerful. He knows who spoke to him. But as far as the blessings of God on him, I think he's still kind of got let's wait and see how this works out. I want to see this very practical, outlook on things. I want to see this and make sure it's real. So, and then verse 22, I believe I read that. The stone, the markers, this is going to be the house of God. And note there, he says, I'm going to give a tenth unto thee. A tenth is a tithe, of course. That's what the word tithe means, that I'm going to give something back to God. We've already seen that with Abraham and Melchizedek. And here it is again, the idea of giving a tenth to God. That's not a something from the Mosaic Law, from the book of Exodus or Leviticus, though, we can find some stuff about it there. Even Christ himself talks about tithing and different things. But this idea of giving 1/10 to God, here it is repeated. Where did that come from? Well, I think that's part of some of that original expression and instructions that God gave humanity. Was, we saw, how did they know how to do the sacrifices? How do they know to offer a lamb? How do they know to do this? I think God had told them. And the giving a tenth, I think that was another expression that God had told humanity, saying, Adam and Eve and, Cain and Abel and Seth, this is what I expect. You're going to do these offerings, and I want you to give back a tenth. That's kind of my thinking on that. I kind of got to read between the lines on the pictures on that. But it's funny, is here Jacob knows what it is. Abraham knew what it was. So interesting concept. It's a fun little study if you want to get into. Where does tithing come from? Should you tithe? Should you give 10% to God? The answer on that is, I believe that's a good place to start, is that, we today, we should give to God, give to the work of God, and tithe is a good place to start. Now, I don't want to chase that rabbit too far. I kind of like grace giving personally, is that you shouldn't just give 10%, give what you can, give out of the abundance that you have. But that's a conversation for another day, and I'm getting so sidetracked. This is 22 verses, and I just found all the rabbit trails chasing this one. So anyway, we're going to call that good and move on before I go off onto another subject in this one. So anyway, appreciate you watching here as we've gone through Genesis chapter number 28. Hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.